Hello, welcome to Hear4Health. That is your information channel for your best health. We're very happy to welcome you here today, and we're very happy to welcome our guest, our expert guest, on Wholistic Kinesiology, a subject about which I know nothing because I have tried looking up information on the peer-reviewed literature, and all that I find is that kinesiology and the methylation, which is part of the cycle, which Lynn will explain, Lynn Cuba, as how that actually diagnoses cancer or is helpful in cancer research. So I'm going to introduce Lynn, and she's going to tell us what is holistic kinesiology.
Well, holistic is I'm testing the whole methyl cycle. The kinesiology is my tool that I used to attain answers from that person's body, kind of like a medical doctor will do blood work or do urine analysis so that they can figure out what's going on. I actually do muscle testing to get answers from the body.
Okay, and how do you test the muscles?
Well, what I do is I can use any muscle on your body. Most people have arms, so they have an arm.
Can you show us?
I'll use it, yes. So since you have an arm, it's kind of like I'd have you, usually if you're laying on a table, you'd be leaning like this, and I'll say, be firm, and I'll be firm, so we're both being firm. Just like you're not gonna throw me against the wall, I'm not gonna throw you on the table, just being firm. And then I will run through my process. I balance first the methyl cycle, which is like the engine that helps the body to build DNA, neurotransmitters, metabolize fat, estrogen. It's eye health. It's your operation system of your whole body. So it's like the different enzymes I go through and test. So when I hit an area that is weak for you, that muscle drops.
Oh, so you do by muscle strength testing to determine what muscles are involved with a dysfunction of the methylation cycle, am I hearing
Right.
you? Okay, so let me explain my perception so that I'm clear, because like I said, I don't know anything about this, but I know in medical school, the methyl or the Krebs citric acid cycle, which may sound familiar to some of you, is the source of the energy packet, if you will, of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. That's the energy cycle that makes every cell in your body work. It's fuel. And how you get there and how well it breaks off parts of it to go from cyclic AMP to adenosine biphosphate to adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, it's where high energy bonds are added onto the original molecule. So I'm very interested on, you're saying that this is a reaction that you are able to assess through your training, how much strength there is at a particular part of the body to be able to determine where there's a deficit.
Right. So like we'll take ATP. ATP is the first area in the methyl cycle that I'm testing. That's the very beginning. And what it is it's specific enzymes that are little vials that I have that have those enzymes in them, and that's what I'm testing your body against. So when I'm testing your body, let's say that comes up as the first area of weakness. That tells me that you inherited NDUFs, like an area that doesn't allow your body to have the energy you need. It's where weight loss, like weight intolerance is. It's where muscle fatigue occurs. So I can actually, when someone comes up with ATP as testing weak, I tell them, do you struggle with energy? They'll be like, oh, I'm tired all the time.
So you correlate that with their subjective report?
As I'm testing them. So as I'm testing the entire methyl cycle, I lift those vials. And I'm like, okay, these are all weak. And it gives me a picture of what genes they inherited from their parents. You know, because those mutations go on from generation to generation to generation. So, and it's kind of cool because that says it takes like 4 generations for stuff to really show. But if you start balancing it, like let's say I start balancing my methyl cycle, and then I have a child and I balance her methyl cycle and keep it balanced, and she has a child and we just keep going, eventually we can kind of fix those mutations as time goes on.
So if you correct a dysfunction in one of the cycles that you have identified as being dysfunctional, and correct me if I'm just giving you my interpretation, if you somehow, and we'll have to go into that, how you do that, but if you somehow then correct that in person number A, let us say, and their child, their progeny, has that same genetically inherited deficiency or dysfunction, and they get exposed to your treatment and correct that, if I'm understanding correctly, then presumably eventually it will die out by the third generation?
By the fourth.
By the fourth generation.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
The reason I say that's interesting is because during the Dust Bowl of Texas, the big famine that swept across Texas, and all the crops that were normally available to people died, there was some evidence to suggest that enzyme systems in the remaining population evolved to meet the different food that was going to be available, that they would have to survive on. And those enzyme systems took about 3 generations to develop. So obviously things can change, and this may be related to the methyl cycle.
Yes, and you're exactly right on track. They talk about how the Slavics went through the same thing, like a famine, and they didn't notice it until like 4 generations later. They noticed people were having difficulty losing weight, and it's because the body was holding on to that weight so that they could survive in times. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's how, kind of like, as I'm testing people, there's like areas where diabetes shows up, which is G6PD, and that comes up and it's like, whoa, does diabetes run in your family? Most of the time they're like, oh yeah, my grandmother or this person or that person, you know. Or there's like MAOA, which is the area where depression sits.
And that's also monoamine oxidase, and there are antidepressants called monoamine oxidase inhibitors, or MAOI, and that's a very common antipsychotic or antidepressant medication that has been evolved. So what I'm hearing you say, again, subject to your critique, but what I'm hearing you say is that the chemical reactions perhaps, or the chemical components of an individual's response may dictate their propensity for effectiveness with a certain medication or class of medications.
Well,
that true?
Run in the natural realm, so I balance those. I balance those genes through supplementation. For example, let's say ATP is off. I will give them acetyl L-carnitine with CoQ10. Sometimes that balances. Sometimes I'll give ribose. Each person is unique. So what works for one to balance the Krebs cycle may not work for another. But I have an office full of supplements that I go through and I test, and I can figure out, okay, well, this is going to balance it. And like, for instance, when I did my methyl cycle,
Yes.
I sat up and cried because the entire 2 boxes of enzymes were weak. And here I had been a natural practitioner for years and was balancing my stuff, and I had the worst methyl cycle. But the good thing is I could balance it. And once you balance one, like let's say we balanced the ATP, the Krebs cycle, sometimes that knocks several other areas back
into
in place.
compliance.
Right. And then we'll go until we get all of it balanced. And then we have a strong methyl cycle, and that can help us to avoid disease. For instance, I have the MTHFR mutation.
And do repeat that, because it's an unusual syndrome, if you will, from my perspective. But if you could explain to the audience how you determined that, and then what you did about it, and how you got into this. That'd be
well,
fascinating.
through the muscle testing and those enzyme vials, we go through and we're testing, and I can see what's causing stress on that person's body. And then you go through and balance it. So at the time when I balanced mine, my whole story is I have had a history of, as a little kid, my stomach always hurt. I was constipated all the time. And my mom was like, oh, Lynn, that little hypochondriac, she always has this and that and everything going on, you know. And then I, you know, grew up and had babies, and I got sicker than a dog taking those prenatal vitamins. And, you know, I was like, oh gosh, terrible. And pregnancies were awful for me. And then as time kept going on, worse things kept happening, to the point where all of a sudden I couldn't even work out. And I was a competitive bodybuilder. And it's like,
Wow.
whoa, am I going to have to, and my husband looked at me and he goes, Lynn, do I need to carry you down the stairs?
Wow.
You know, because I hurt so bad. And that forced me to like, okay,
Let me
something
really
is
look at
really
this.
wrong.
Yeah.
And that's when I found out I had MTHFR, which 50% of,
MTHFR?
yes, which actually 50% of the population does have that mutation. So it's not like I'm special, although, you know, all of us are special. But once I found that out, then I knew I needed to balance
And you
it out.
balance. First of all, how did you find it out? You said when you determined that you had it. Specifically, how did you determine?
Well, for me, I was a doctor chaser because I was desperate. You know, I even kept a journal of all my blood work. You know, come on, guys, something
is going on.
Yeah, something's going on. Do you see something here? You know, and I finally met a doctor that said, whoa, your homocysteine levels are through the roof.
Wow.
You know, and I'm like, well, that, to me, that, because I was already a practitioner and I knew homocysteine would cause muscle soreness and
Well,
the
plus you're a
joint pain.
bodybuilder, you know.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue with
Yeah.
bodybuilding.
Yes. So he said, I'm going to do a test on you and see if you're MTHFR. Luckily, he knew about it. And that's when he
I'm
came back
impressed,
and
yeah.
he said, you have MTHFR, you're homocysteine, meaning I got it from both parents, or homozygous, meaning I got it from both parents. And he's like, so that's a tough one, you know, and he said, you might take a good, you know, B12. Okay, you know, and because I was already a practitioner, I started testing what B12 worked for me.
Sure.
You know, so then for where I went to school, I contacted one of my professors or one of my mentors and teachers and said, you know, I was wondering if you have a point for MTHFR because I haven't, and I want to balance it. And he's like, oh, Lynn, I don't have a point for MTHFR. I have a point for the whole methyl cycle. She said, you can't fix MTHFR, which is here in the
itself.
middle,
Yeah.
when you have all this other stuff that has to happen before it even gets there.
So she went back to track. And what was her specialty, may I ask?
Well, she is a doctor and a chiropractor.
MD, doctor?
Yeah, she's
DC?
yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
doctor of chiropractic. Yeah.
Yes. And she started learning about, you know, biochemistry and learning about the methyl cycle because she as well had problems with areas of her methyl cycle which she couldn't figure out either. You know, it's like, you know, she just didn't have that happy gene, and all of a sudden when she balanced the methyl cycle, her whole entire personality changed.
So when
know?
you say happy G, meaning she was very depressed and that's why she
wasn't very depressed, but she just, you know, struggled with that
ongoing,
area. Yes.
ongoing depression.
And it
a
was,
lot of people do.
Yeah, and it was something as simple as adding B6 into her program. You know, what was neat is you find the proper supplementation to balance the methyl cycle. So you're doing kind of a genetic fix and it balances it. But like I tell my clients, unfortunately, if you stop taking your supplements, you go back to what genes you inherited. It's not a gene
It won't fix.
replace.
It's like the software won't fix the hard drive.
Right.
The hard
right.
drive is there. It's what you inherited.
Right. Like I've had clients with cancer, with MS, that have come in and they're like, "Oh, it's gone. You know, I'm well."
I'm
like,
well.
you have to stay on your supplements because we balanced that cycle. If you get off the supplements, you go back to what you inherited.
Okay.
You know, one of them, she was good for a year, even had a baby. They told her she'd never have children. She even had a baby. She was doing great. She thought, I don't need those anymore. Sure enough, it came back. And she was like, Lynn, retest me and get me back. So she just comes, like she's lucky, she stays on those same supplements and she stays balanced. When she feels off, like I tell my clients when they come in, it's like, okay, I'm going to put you on this program for 30 days. And I give them enough supplementation for 30 days because I want them to feel the difference.
To know the difference between where they were and where they are now.
Exactly. And I said, and then we'll see you in 30 days and see how you're testing. You know, and people come in and they're like, I feel great. I said, well, let's see how you're doing. And then if we have to tweak something, we do. And then I tell them, you come back when you feel something's off. And, you know, now they know, because now they know what it feels like to feel good. And they'll be like, how will I know? It's like, something won't feel right.
Do you work with any, there's so many questions I have about this that I love the fact that the person has to take really close stock and be aware of what's going on with them as an individual and be able to say, this is normal for me, this is not normal for me. I really like that. I find it hard to correlate that, however, with telling me that after the third generation it changes. Shouldn't there be changes along these generational changes where they won't need supplementation, that they'll automatically genetically develop their enzyme systems, if you will?
If they stick to the program, their next generation sticks to the program, the next and the next, then we can start seeing, you know, and it's like, we're always responsible for our own selves.
Of course.
You know, and a lot of times people, they don't want to take the time to take care of themselves.
Of course.
And it's so sad that I get people who come in and they don't even know they're sick. They just feel like something's off and I just want to see what it is. But when they get balanced, they're like, oh, I didn't know. I had one of my clients come in happy as could be and say, I quit my job today. And I'm like, she goes, because of you. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
what have I done?
Because of me, what have I done? And they're like, I didn't know I was sick. I didn't know. Now I have energy. I have energy to get out there and find another job and to do something I enjoy. So they're actually able to tap into health. Nothing feels better than health. Right.
Nothing feels better than health.
Right.
I'm totally with you on that. But I also, it's interesting. How do they come to you in the first place? How do they know to come to you in the first place?
Well, I'm not a good advertiser. I don't advertise. I strictly go by word of mouth. And I have clients throughout the United States because I have clients in every state. And I have a couple, one in Malaysia, one in Paris. So, and it's all through word of mouth. And they come in
So they travel
way.
from Paris or Malaysia?
That's a good question. I do surrogate testing, which sounds like, whoa,
Well,
how
explain
woo is
that.
that?
Yeah. What is that?
Yes, surrogate testing is because I get people who, one, they're too sick to come in. I've taken care of people that I have never met until they've gotten well. And then they come in like, Lynn, you know, like they know me and I'm like, hi,
Hello,
I
nice to
don't know
meet
them. Yeah, but it's like you will put a person, and usually I pick a person that kind of allows the test to come through. And I put them in surrogation, so they actually are not them, they're the person I'm surrogating, which sounds really woo-woo, but it really works. I learned that through when I did certification with Psych K. They taught how you could do surrogate testing.
Psych K, could you explain what that is?
Psych K.
Spell that too.
It's PSYCH, I think psych.
Could be.
I don't know, off the hand.
That sounds like
Psych
psych
K,
from,
yeah.
from my perspective.
And
then K.
just letter K, Psych K.
And it is, what is it, an app or?
No, you have to go through training for that. But
Psych K.
yeah, Psych K, it's more for balancing the emotions. It's more for balancing, let's say
Look that up.
we don't jive together. Have you ever met somebody that you just don't, you have a hard
an
time being
immediate
around?
antipathy, yeah,
Right.
feeling about.
We can balance that through Psych K.
Wow, so
or-
you can, for example, if you and I had this immediate antipathy, I'm saying that simply because we're on camera.
Right.
So if we had this antipathy and I wanted or you wanted to do something about it, whoever was upset with that could learn how to actually get along with you through that, or vice versa?
You could balance it. You could find out which one of us has that feeling towards the other. Sometimes it's mutual, and you
yeah.
could balance it. The thing that I use it most for is I have people who actually come in my office that are switched. So when you're testing them with muscle testing, you'll test to see if they believe positive things for their life, like I am worthy of what life has to offer
me.
Right.
Or what I can get
and they
from
test
life.
weak. And it's like, well, you don't.
So there's a discrepancy.
Right. And then they're opposite. It's like, I'm not worthy. They're nice and strong. And I'm like, okay, this is switched. Once you balance that, I had a young man whose mom brought him in, and he was a teenager. And he comes in, he sits in my office, and he's like, well, I want that. And he pointed to the belief balance. And I'm like, well, I'm going to balance your methyl cycle, and I'm going to balance everything else, and we'll do that afterwards. You know, so I put him through the whole program, and I said, now let's do that because that's what you wanted. Blew me away. I should have listened to the kid when he came in. That's all he needed. After we balanced that, he had the entire thing switched. Once we balanced him, he didn't need his supplements. That was the whole problem. So as a practitioner, you have to also listen to your clients. You
Always.
know? I always tell them. Like
They know best.
They do, because when they come in, I say, okay, we're going to test you, and I'm going to tell them I'm going to balance your methyl cycle, I'm going to balance nutrients, I'm going to balance allergies and hormones, I'm going to balance any challenges like in the environment that you might be having, and the cardiovascular system. And it's like, as we go through this test, if something feels off or something feels weird, speak. If you have a question, ask. Said, you live in that body, and you are more acquainted with your body than I am. And you'll know, God puts it in you to know that, something's wrong, you know? So I have them talk to me, and I have them ask questions. Sometimes I'll be testing, it's like, dang it, you know, this thing that can usually be balanced with this, and this isn't working for you. I'm going to have to figure out what it is. It's something different. And they're like, well, what about blah? And I'm like,
I didn't think of that.
It's totally foreign. That shouldn't balance that area, but I'm going to test it because you blurted it out, and sometimes it does balance it. So it's important that you listen to your body. You know, and I tell people, whether I give you a supplement or a doctor gives you one or anybody, if something doesn't feel right for you, I tell them, if you're struggling to swallow a supplement, your body's trying to say, I don't want that. Don't force it down. It's, you know, I tell them it's just a quick text or a quick call to say, Lynn, I'm struggling to swallow that supplement, you know?
Do you think a lot of people do that regardless of their they're feeling that this is not a good idea, that they do it anyway? Do you think there is that sort of transition that occurs usually in response to, forgive me, I have a bias, medical care? For example, the care practitioner says, you need this, and this. And they tried this, and this is okay, but they try that one, it's like, I don't like the way that makes me feel. And then they probably, I would imagine, be less compliant with that. Do you think that is where the truth lies?
Well, they could become less compliant. I've had clients come in where, for instance, I had this elderly woman who came in, and she always came with her daughters. And their daughters came in, you know, kind of like little tattletales. They're like, Mother wouldn't take her pills. And I'm like, well, that's good. Maybe they're not testing good for her anymore. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh. And we tested her, and a couple of her supplements were no longer testing as a remedy for her, and they were actually testing as adverse for her.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what had been initially beneficial became less beneficial. And is this because of the choreography that occurs as it comes down the pike? With any chemical reaction in the body, everything's connected. So if you corrected up here, perhaps upstream, that you would have allowed a normal level to react adversely with the supplement? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, as they're taking that supplement, it was working for whatever it needed to work for. But then your body gets either enough of it, or it gets, sometimes I think the body's a little smart, and they're like, well, I'll show them. You know, kind of like me with MTHFR. I'll be good with a specific B12. Like you have to, when you're MTHFR, you need, I tell my clients, a digested form of B12. And that means you need something that's methylated for you. So
now that's very interesting because I have had gut surgery, which means I do not absorb B12 orally. I have to have it through the blood. So, for example, you've mentioned B12 as well as I think B6 as supplements. What methodology do you, what conveyance do you use? Is it oral? Is it sublingual, directly into the blood? Is it injectable like I am? How do you determine that, or is there a standard that you use?
well, that's all through the muscle testing. I'm putting the
How do you suggest that they take the supplement is my question specifically.
well, first I test the supplement. I put it in their realm, which is next to their body, and
Physically, not
yes,
injected or
physically,
anything.
yeah. And then I test with muscle testing if it's a remedy, which is under the cheekbone. Is this a remedy for this person? And if it's nice and strong, it's like, okay, that's good. But then I also check if I give this to them. There's a point, so I call it the adverse point, and those are the 2 points I teach all my clients: is remedy and adverse, which is the bone that's kind of sticks out on your chest. A little bit
It's called
down,
the angle of Lewis. This
Yeah,
one here,
yeah.
the little angle.
And I tell them, okay, so if it's nice and strong there, that tells me it's good for them to take.
And you measure an electrical current, or?
It's through the muscle testing.
Okay.
I wish I would have bought a supplement that I
Well-
knew would be bad for you and one that I knew would be good for you. And then I could have tested them. I do that to little kids when they're throwing a fit in the store.
Sure.
I want this candy. And I'm like, oh, do you think that candy's good for you? They're like, yeah. And I go, let's do some muscle testing. I said, be strong, and they'll be nice and strong. And I say, oh, well, let's see if it's adverse for your body. I touch that point, it's like, whoa. They drop.
Interesting.
And then they're looking at me like, how'd you do them parents? How'd you do that? It's like, well, it's like sugar's usually not good for anybody.
Well, could you conversely do that whole experiment that you just talked about and then said, let's find out if it's bad for you, and have them actually get stronger when you hit the adverse point? Or is that always with everybody you hit an adverse point, it's going to decrease?
No, I want it to be strong. Like, but I already know that candy is not good for a kid. So if I'm going to test that at voice point, they're going to drop. So I already know that, but let's say.
But you tell them in advance if it's going to be adverse, right?
Because then the kids won't. I want them to see how weak it makes them, because then they're like Superman.
But you're influencing the result. You're
no,
saying, no, you're not. Okay.
No, their little arm is nice and strong.
Okay.
And you test that adverse point and it just drops.
Without telling them anything.
Yeah, without telling them anything. I get men in the office and they'll be like,
big muscular guy.
Yeah, they'll be testing, and I'll get something that their body's struggling with, and they're like, oh, I wasn't ready. Just wait a minute. Let me get ready. And go, okay, go ahead and get ready. And then we do it again, and they drop. I said, that's just an area that your body's struggling. And that's why, and a lot of people will even say, geez, Lynn, that is so weird. And when I was the person on the table,
Sure.
I came from an engineering background. So I'm more like 1 + 1 = 2. And then I go and see this practitioner who's putting stuff next to my body and muscle. I'm like, you're messing with me.
Yeah.
I told her, give me a break. What's the game? I was not the best client. And she's said, well, that's just an area of weakness for you. But I couldn't understand how putting
something like that next to you is going to make a difference. That's a question I have, of course. That would be a logical question.
Well, yeah.
How
and I would be
this
like,
vial make any difference to me?
Yeah, it's like, give me a break. You mean that putting that bottle next to me, I'm strong, and now it's the good thing?
Is there some sort of a explanation that can be given?
Yes.
Okay, please
I
lay it
finally
on
came
us.
up with because they didn't give me an explanation.
Oh, okay.
They were just like, oh, it just is. And I'm like, that doesn't work for an analytical person. I need to know why 1 + 1 is 2.
I'm sorry, what was did you say you were an engineer?
I wasn't an engineer. I worked in the engineering realm as just supporting engineers. I'm more into the math thing, do accounting and stuff like that at that time.
So very practical kind of left brain kind of stuff.
Majorly left brain. So that stuff was just,
out of your realm.
Oh, yeah. So now that I've done this for almost 30 years, it's kind of like I realize it's like we're not just this massive body. We also have an exterior.
Yes, we do.
So you put that substance next to that person, and
it's incorporated in there.
Yeah, it's like they're getting it. They're absorbing it, and it's like all of a sudden they're nice and strong. So I'll tell people, because some people have really easy energy to read, and I'll say, okay, gosh, your energy's super easy. I'm going to take it away. And I'm going to say, and I want you to feel the weakness. And they're like, okay, I feel that. And I go, feel how your body switches when I bring it back. And some of them are like, oh, I could feel that, you know.
Right.
I want to wake you up to your own body. It's like,
it's a very, that's a very, right, you're right, woo-woo out there. But there was a movie, and long time ago, and I wish I could remember the movie, but it was about I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, an estuary, which is, the way I'm using it anyway, is indicating to mean a waterway which at tide fills up, and so it is like impassable by foot. But then when the tide goes out, it becomes land again, the land underneath. A castle was in the middle of that, and there was a movie that was made with Liv Ullmann in it, there where they talked about very esoteric scientific principles and sort of woo-woo out there, and one of which was that we are basically composed of a huge number of atoms, which basically have no mechanical connection to each other. So theoretically, we should be able to walk through walls or have things pass through us. Clearly, that doesn't happen. But at the same time, the fact that we are a mass of atoms indicates that we share with our environment a great deal of things that we don't even begin to know what to question.
that actually explains serigation. Because when I started doing serigation, testing people through another person, it just didn't register with me. I was like, this is
Well, there's a
weird.
larger theory of that called morphic resonance. Have you heard of that? Which Rupert Sheldrake did a number of experiments, very interesting experiments in England, brilliant man, who was basically ostracized by his community for inferring that a rat that learned a maze in England somehow could transmit that learning to a rat in Australia, who then could run the experiment of the maze much more quickly, measurably quickly, with a measurable p-value, which researchers respect, compared to a rat that had never done the maze at any point in time.
Yeah.
And how that happens is anyone's guess. He really had some very elegant experiments devised, which cast a great number of questions on morphic resonance. So there may be something to that that relates to what you're doing, but I mean, I have to say, I know that we have not officially studied this, and maybe we should be kind of open to these sorts of things, because even if we don't know the explanation, it doesn't mean that they don't happen. You know?
Well, I would actually prefer the person to come in person.
Oh, that's always the best.
I want them to experience it. I want them to feel it. I want them to see it. I want their input. But for people who just can't, you know, like I have clients from Florida and Virginia, New York, California. I mean, they're all over the place where it's expensive to come in. You know what I mean?
And once a month, you know, until they get tested and they're on the right track.
Right, right. And so it's just really cool that we can balance them. You know, we balance all those areas, and they get their health back. Like for me, not being able to walk, all my muscles hurt so bad. Once I balanced my methyl cycle, I was back to normal. I was back in the gym lifting weights. I had energy. I felt great. And it was like a miracle. And it's funny because I've been doing this forever. And my brother used to call me the witch doctor. And he'd make fun of me. Oh, the Lynn the witch doctor. You know, and then I told him, let me balance your methyl cycle. So I balanced his methyl cycle and got him on a little program. And I didn't hear from him at all. And I'm like, I wonder why.
Hope he's okay.
Yeah, I know. Hope he's fine, you know. And my mom called him and says, Ed, you know, we haven't heard from you. She's like, how are you doing? She goes, I'm not going to call Lynn. I feel so good. I am not going to jinx it. You know?
How funny is
He
that?
said, I can jump out of my truck now. I can move. I can do this. I can do that. He's like, I don't even want to call her, you know. And he knows it because he gets lazy. And he won't take his supplements, and he'll call me and goes, gosh, Lynn, I'm in so much pain. I go, are you on your supplements?
I didn't want to call you because I knew you'd ask me that.
Yeah, he's like, no. So then he gets back on his supplements, you know, or we retest him, you know, because sometimes the body doesn't like, you've been on them for so long, it's like they kind of need to be tweaked or changed, you know. So some clients can stay on supplements long term. Others have to have more care than, we're all different.
I'm asking you this because I know that there's going to be someone who's going to be asking, does insurance pay for this at all?
Unfortunately not.
It joins the growing list of things that insurance doesn't do, I know.
Yeah.
So I mean, how much does one need to consider as an expense if you're going to do this sort of thing for an individual? If they
Like
were going,
my office charges and
yeah,
stuff?
well,
or-
I mean, the course of event charges, like however many treatments they need for however much time over what period of time.
Yeah. I'm actually, because I have the second worst genes in my office, I'm very financial conscious. So I work with my clients. It's like I have my office visit and I sell their supplements to them by the need. You know, some people, like, I have not the best genes, so I take a lot of supplements. So it would cost me a lot if I had to buy bottles, so I buy what I need. Other people, they don't really need much. I tell them, well, if you want, you could buy a bottle. You know, you've been on this for a while. You know, because once they go out the door, I can't let them come back in the door. It's just against the law. You know, those supplements could be tainted in some way after they leave your office. So, you know what
return
I mean?
them, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So it's like I work with them in that way. So, and then I don't see people every month. It's like the first visit, I test you, and I see where you're at, and I'll test you in 30 days to see where you're at and tweak. Some people, you know, if they are MTHFR and they have a lot of really severe things, usually it's good if they did come in every 30 days. But I look at them financially. I tell them, okay, see how you feel. And if you're feeling great and you're not feeling like you're struggling to swallow things, it's like, give me a call. We can just give you another 30 days of supplements instead of paying for an office visit again.
Sure.
It's like, you know,
because
because
you've
it's
already
expensive.
worked them out. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So I want to be able them to be able to. My goal is for them to stay well instead of coming all the time.
I didn't ask you, and I'm thinking now I should have. What does MTHFR
FR.
represent? What do you mean by that when you say that?
Well, that's the one SNF, and it's long. That's why we do it by MTHFR.
Go ahead and say it in case
it's methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. That's the
methylene tetrate hydrofolate. No,
reductase.
reductase.
Right.
So it's an enzyme that works on
the
methyl.
the conversion of B12. So because we need B12 for DNA production, you know, everybody needs B12. And if you can't get B12, kind of like me as a person who was MTHFR, they were giving me folate. Folate's poison to someone with MTHFR. It makes you super sick. The sad thing is when you buy foods that are fortified,
You're going to get the folate.
When you buy flour in the store, you're going to get the folate. So those clients, it's like, okay, that's your poison, that's your kryptonite is folate. Also, I have some MTHFR people that are very sensitive to B vitamins. So I have to find the right B12 for them. Some will take hydroxyl B12. Some can take adenosine B12. Some are good with 5-MTH folate. So it just depends on what tests well for that individual.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Well, I for example, B12 is, I have limited knowledge of this, so I can only say that because I had gut surgery, I know that I cannot absorb I cannot get intrinsic factor. There's two factors that have to go along for B12 to be absorbed into the body. There's the extrinsic factor, which clearly states I'm going to be taking this, but it has to join up with the intrinsic factor, which is a portion of the gut that produces it in our bodies, in order for it to be absorbed in the correct form into our bloodstream. So I know, because I had gut surgery and part of that gut was removed because of an intussusception, I have to have like sublingual B12, and I could measure the efficacy of that B12 by my red blood cell production, because RBC, red blood cells, are generated through the chemical availability of B12 in the body. And if you don't have, if you've had gut surgery and you don't have sublingual, a sublingual source of it, or an IM directly into the body source, you can't absorb it through the gut. It just, it doesn't come in a form that you can absorb. So that's a very interesting correlation, and probably ties in with what you're saying too. But there's overlap in all features of healthcare, I'm convinced,
Right.
because there's so much that applies, and we do need to be able to talk with each other and be able to listen to each other without bias, to be able to determine what works for that individual. Because as you point out, we all have different needs and we all have different genetic makeups.
Right.
So you don't correlate this, and this is the other question, that we don't correlate this particular assessment that you do, the analysis of the individual, with genetic tests, or do you?
Well, it's kind of neat because I just go, as long as I call them like a virgin, I tell them, as long as you're not on supplements that are fixing it, I can actually do the test and I could pretty much mirror your 23andMe. Because I have a nutritionist that I work with who used to send her clients to me and I'd test them. And in the meantime, she'd also have them do 23andMe, and they actually matched. And she's like, geez, Lynn, it matched, which is cool. I was happy to see that. But if they're taking, like, let's say you're MTHFR and you're taking B12, it may not show if you've balanced it, it may not show in my office, and
But it may not also show folate either. If you're taking folate and there's an adverse effect, if you haven't tested for that adverse effect with folate for that individual.
Oh yes, I have folate in my office, so it would show to me that that's not
But
a good
if you
thing.
didn't know that person, in other words, was artificially supporting the normal values through folate, or artificially suppressing or influencing those values
Right.
with a adverse substance, a substance adverse to them.
Right.
So interesting.
Well, also it's just interesting that as long as you balance that area, it's like the MTHFR is like one of the not so good genes to have a mutation in, but you can fix it. But it's kind of funny because the symptoms of it vary so much. It's kind of like, for some people, I had a young lady who came in and she couldn't stand light. The lights would hurt her all the time. It was like a miracle for her. Now she goes, Lynn, I can go outside without sunglasses. I'm like, well, you could wear sunglasses because you could get cataracts. I think of all the old age stuff,
right.
But for her, it was her eyes. For me, it was my joints. One of my kids is MTHFR. He knows his program's off. Same thing, his forearms, joints in his forearms start to ache, and he knows he needs to come back in. I have some people where
to come in to be reassessed.
He's like, Mom, I think my program's off, and this is how I know. I have some clients where they have the symptoms of like muscle aches, like, oh, my calf hurts today, but well, my shoulder hurts this day and that. So they kind of feel like they're like the people that have fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is usually a big indicator that they're MTHFR.
Really?
Yeah, fibromyalgia. If you have like cleft palate runs in your family, autism is really a good one for MTHFR. Cancer is a good one for MTHFR. So that's like an important one to balance. Like now that I have my methyl cycle balanced, all those like digestive issues like constipation is gone, muscle soreness is gone, my homocysteine levels are normal, because I'm getting the right B12 for my body.
I think we were signaled that we're close to the, I didn't catch it, that we're close to the time for our, is that right? Close to the time for the interview. So I want to, before I run out of time, is there something that you could tell our listening audience, what are 2 features that you, from your experience, would like to impart to them as to what would help their health?
Number 1, listen to your body. So many people, it's funny, it's kind of like they're like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm kind of psychic, but I felt that. And I'm like, your body will talk to you. Pay attention. If you go somewhere and something doesn't feel right, listen. If you're taking something and it doesn't feel right, speak up. You are your body's advocate. So you need to tell whoever is working with you. I tell my clients, just send me a text. Maybe there's something I can help you with. So listen to your body's number 1.
Okay.
And then like the second thing is your body believes what you tell it. I get so many people who go through the internet looking at different diseases, and they come in with all these diseases. It's like, well, you know, if you're going to search the internet and fit yourself into all these things, you're actually manifesting that into your life. Don't manifest sickness.
Making yourself sick.
Yeah, you're making yourself sick. I actually put a sign in my office that says your body, it's a scripture that says your body believes what you tell it, you know? And the reason I put that is when I was up in Virginia, a lot of my clients would come in pre-diagnosed, self-diagnosed. And I'm like, well, you don't have that, you know, that's actually kind of rare, but this is what's happening. You need to stop manifesting illness on your own body. So that's a big thing. That's what the experts are for, you know, whether it's me or you or somebody else, you know, and if an expert you go to doesn't feel right for you, it's okay to change. I tell my clients, if our personalities don't jive and you don't feel comfortable with me, it's okay to change.
Yeah.
Maybe I can refer you to somebody, you know. You have to feel comfortable with the person that you're trusting your little temple to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, because I do think everyone would do so much better if we all would work together and be able to tap into each other's expertise on all things. So,
Right.
thank you so much for the time that you spent coming here and taking your time to do that. And thank you so much for listening. We're so happy to have you here. And we will be posting on YouTube, and all of Lynn's accreditations and resume will also be posted. And we thank Windfire Productions for taping this, and Studio 519. Thank you. And Hear4Health, we're out. Thank you so much.